Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. And I have a couple of guests that'll be coming on pretty soon. And we're going to be talking about basketball. So, without further ado, let's get some things going on.
And that's why I'm so passionate about more schools having media in the curriculum. Because, Coach Jeffrey, when you talk about marginalized students, there are schools that do have this, but a lot of students of color in their schools, they don't have it. And certainly people will say some schools marginalized with the marginalized students don't have a budget. They don't have to have a full production studio, Coach Jeffrey. They don't have to have 3 and 4 cameras, green screen, lights, and everything like that. Nowadays, if students have a cell phone, which depending on what grade level you're in, if you're talking about junior high school, most students have a cell phone. And as long as they can get some apps, they can start right there creating content and really starting to, again, push out positive pieces of content, tell positive stories that can inform and inspire.
The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed during this or any broadcast belong solely to our guests or our hosts. These broadcasts do not represent or reflect the views of their employers, sponsors, or affiliated organizations.
Welcome to the Flipboard EDU podcast with your host, William Jeffrey, where we collaborate, communicate, and educate with the greatest educators in the world on Flipboard. Let's start the show.
Welcome back, Flipboard fam. This is your favorite coach, Coach Jeffrey. And on March 2nd, 2021, Texas Governor Gregory Abbott, along with Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves, decided to waive the mask requirements for their respective states. Face masks have become our new normal in the COVID-19 pandemic, since they were quickly required to slow the spread of the coronavirus. Moreover, public health experts say that masks are key in ensuring schools are safe for students and staff. This plan was shared with all stakeholders simultaneously as a newscast, without mention of a strategy for the safe return of students, teachers, or guidance for transportation, extracurricular competitions, and special events such as proms, graduations, that all happen in the spring. So in this episode, I share the mic with fellow educators to explore the pros and cons of this type of decision making from an educational standpoint. We cover the impact of the decision on students and teachers, and talk about the push to fully open up as the 4th largest city in the United States grapples with 4 virulent strains of the coronavirus. So like we always do about this time, let's collaborate, communicate, and educate with the best educators in the world right here on Flipboard EDU Podcast. All right, welcome back, Flipboard fam. I am getting together a group of people who will come on and we'll talk about good old basketball. Love basketball. So we'll move on we'll move on. Teaching and learning. Why are you so passionate about teaching history and students learning history?
I guess I've always wanted kids to really like history more. I never was taught history in middle school. I went to a real Catholic school that never really actually taught us history. So I had my first experience with history actually my freshman year, jumping right into AP World History. I was just really inspired by it, but all the other kids I would see around me would fall asleep in class. and then they would fail their AP exam. And so I've always wanted to like help out kids kind of see history in a better light, because there's so many fun stories in history, so many interesting stories that I guess schools will look past and kids will look past. And there's just so many ways to make history fun and to kind of keep kids, learning. And I think the reason why I'm so passionate about it is because of how kind of history has changed me. Originally going in, never having a history class, to all of a sudden going into a history class. And now it's my major all of a sudden. I guess like 4 or 5 years later.
Hey, what's up, my brother? Can you hear me? There we go. What's up, man?
Hey, William, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. I got my boy Aaron here. Let's see if Aaron, can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. Can you hear me all right?
Oh, excellent. Look at you, man. I see y'all doing it. Hold on 1 second. And okay, I'm just waiting on my man George to show up. Oh, that's bad business for my face. Hold on. There we go. All right. So listen, David, let me start with you, sir. Get your little emails about UCLA. Just want to let you know I see you.
Well, you asked me who I thought I was going to root for in the tournament, and it's never a question. I had no idea we'd still be talking about them, but it was never a question.
Yeah. Those guys are doing. Oh man, they're doing really, really, really well.
Just Pac-10 in general. What's going on? They got trashed. They got trashed all year. Now they're dominating.
Yeah, they're 8-0. But I got to say, I wish they were 7-1. I still hate USC any more than.
Yes. Hold on 1 second. My camera has just flipped out on me, guys. So excuse me. Well, let's do this. Let's see. Oh, hold on. We'll do this because there we go. We'll go old school. All right, there we go. All right, so we are running live on my. We're running live on my end. So let's do some talking and some introducing. Start off with Aaron. Let's tell our listening audience a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am a middle school principal in Evansville, Indiana, assistant principal. Also, as a side hustle, have a dog business with my wife. So we own a doggy daycare, boarding, grooming. And then as another side hustle as an educator, turned to podcasting because I love basketball. So 19.9 is the brand. I host a podcast for them about basketball history, essentially. So we just look back at old teams and they re-release retro shorts and all that. It helps me with work on my speaking skills and just have some fun too.
Yes, you do an amazing job. Your podcast is an amazing podcast, and those shorts, man, y'all got big and tall.
Yeah. You got to send me your address. I'm gonna send you some. You got to let me know which one you want.
Don't tease me with a good time.
I'm not.
Sir.
No, I'm not. I know how it is in education. I got to help the assist APs out.
Hey man, God bless you. I sure appreciate it. Then I got my man David Preston. Welcome back to the show, Dave.
I feel honored, man. I'm here among the admin team. Y'all making the big bucks and passing out the swag.
That's right.
Yes, David, tell our listening audience a little bit about yourself. Refresh our memory.
I'm just a fresh orphan in the world of William. I grew up playing basketball, and that was about 2 lifetimes ago. And I hobble around the court once in a while, but dyed in the wool UCLA fan, as I've already been blamed for. And I teach high school English, and I'm just, living the pandemic dream along with everybody else.
Yes, you're also an author. You wrote a book. Give us the name of your book.
I did. My publisher would hate the fact that I don't plug that all the time. The book is called Academy of One. The idea and the software practice is open source learning. And basically, now that we're all friends, you're in the network, and I'd love for you to learn with my students and for me to learn with yours, and we can put people together in ways we never have before. So I'm just trying to take the opportunity.
Yes, thank you. And we got my man George Couros on the line. George, welcome to the show. Welcome back. George is frozen.
Like this year.
Yeah. Hey, has this not? Okay, so let's talk about this year. Hey, Dave, has this year been a great year, one for the memory books for you?
Well, what's the alternative? Yes, in the sense that, I've been surfing all of the crisis and all of the trauma with my family, my learners, and my community. At the same time, thank goodness so far, I'm above the dirt, and we're living to fight another day. And I'm really hoping that some of the things that we all took out of this, whether it was the campus closures, whether it was the cultural responses and the ways that we watch people communicate and interact, and what can you do, especially with the business we're in, except to say, I'm really hoping we learn something, because one way or the other, there's no going back to whatever came before. There's no going back to normal. So I'm really hoping that we're headed towards something better. And, for my part, I'm pushing toward it.
Totally agree with that. How about you, Aaron?
Yeah, I've got the Survive in Advance shirt on as well. That's been the theme of the entire year this year, is just survive in advance, one day at a time. I do feel like, I've listened to a lot of podcasts, as I did even before all this, and I do feel like there has been some opportunity to push things in new directions, and certainly for our staff. I mean, innovation is a part of any kind of difficulty, and you see people come together in interesting ways too. It is getting to be that point of the year where people get a little worn down anyway. So finding that energy this time of year. We're on spring break right now, so I'm glad for everybody, because everybody needed a week to gather themselves, and we got one final push to get through this year and turn the page, hopefully.
Yes, spring break. We had our spring break last week, and my family, my children get 2 weeks of spring break this year, and I work in another school district, so that's a little unfair, but it's all good.
2 years in a row, this is the second spring break in a row, I gave students the option, and both times they went with continuity. So we're just cruising through and doing our thing. And it's interesting to me, because there's so many ways to do, all good intentions. Everybody tried to respond to the crisis, and a lot of educators didn't have training or preparation for what was going to happen. But this wasn't distance learning or virtual learning. We see all those debates out there in the media. This was a crisis response. And for a lot of people who tried to do their old style classroom on a learning management system, it did not go well. And by doing something completely different and just connecting with people, and it doesn't matter whether they're students, doesn't matter whether they're parents, grandparents. I've had pancake breakfast on Sunday. We've had reading with the younger siblings with the kids. It's a lot like this conversation. I see George came back online.
Yeah. Welcome back, George.
Bad internet in Canada here.
He wanted to skip the UCLA talk.
I'm a big UCLA fan. I was back.
Oh no.
Yeah, sorry.
Right on, George.
Coach,
George, you and I can be friends.
Well, that's a John Wood. I was a big. I'm a huge Lakers fan, and Kareem was probably my first player that I loved was Kareem. I remember actually probably like grade 7 adopting the skyhook, my basketball games.
Right
so,
on.
Yeah, so I'm like a big Lou Alcindor Kareem fan, and yeah.
All right,
yeah,
this became show and tell time.
Okay, now for our audio, David Preston is showing out because he has a handwritten note from the man legend himself, Dr. John Wooden.
That's pretty cool.
Wow, that
cool.
is amazing. Yep. And David, your story about Dr. Wooden, and then I want to introduce George. So go ahead, David.
Well, when I was a kid, I wrote him a letter, and I really wanted to work at his basketball camps. And I was a little bit too young, but they took me on as a project coming out of middle school. And I couldn't afford to go to his camp as a camper, but I was sort of like a counselor in training. And then during high school, I worked as a counselor at his camps, and got to know Coach. Became a head counselor for one summer, and that was the best job in history because I got to drive him back and forth from his condo in what was it, Encino near Los Angeles to Cal Lutheran, which was about a 45-minute drive. And so I learned from Coach 45 minutes each way, and he hardly ever talked about basketball. It was poetry and politics and just life. The guy was the most amazing educator, and we've all heard the stories, but a lot of times you hear about great people from a distance, and then the closer you get, the different the view. And this was absolutely the real deal. I was just really blessed to be in the man's presence.
That's an amazing story. And I also want to officially welcome George Couros to the show. George, if you can give our listening audience just a little bit of information about yourself.
Well, I don't know if I want to talk education stuff because I'm ready to talk basketball. Yeah. So I'm an educator, but I actually, probably one of the reasons I went into teaching was, and it was interesting because I started elementary. I wanted to be an elementary teacher, but I played basketball, and I wanted to coach high school basketball. And my first job was in a very small town, and it was like, hey, I'll take this grade 4 job, but I also want to be able to coach at the high school. And they're like, nobody wants to coach the high school. So, that's a done deal. So yeah, I've always been involved in basketball to some aspect. Probably not the last several years because I've been traveling and speaking, and nobody's doing anything with basketball teams right now. But I've played for a long time. I coached for several years, and I reffed, which was amazing. And actually, one of the guys I reffed with from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, his name is Matt Callio. He's actually just broke into the NBA as a ref this year. And I used to do I don't know what you call it, there's senior men's games, and we used to do those together. And it's like, and it was funny because it's like older people that are, some of them haven't played basketball in years, or haven't maybe been in basketball shape in years. And it's like, that was a foul. I'm like, no, you're just getting slow. And they laugh, right? Because you could kind of have those conversations, and just kind of seeing that, I used to do those games with Matt, and now he's as a referee, which is pretty cool to see. Yeah. So I've always been, I would say basketball saved me, because I'm living in Canada. I played hockey for the first 5 years because I think it's a law, and then I quit. And there's actually 2 of us. I was a very heavy kid, and I was a bigger kid and couldn't skate. And there's 2 of us, and we were the slowest people on the team. And I quit, and the other guy stuck with it. And it's Brendan Witt, who had a 15-year in the NHL, which I'm like, I should have stuck with it. But but all of a sudden, I actually quit. I was probably grade 5, and then I just had a growth spurt, and then come play basketball. So I've been involved with basketball, and yeah, it's been amazing. So I'm obsessed with kind of all facets of the culture of it too, which is really interesting.
I'm feeling pretty good because one guy I hung out with went to the NBA, one guy went to the NHL. Yeah. I'm kind of wondering where we're all headed today.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know about y'all, but one day I'm headed for retirement. So good luck with all you guys going to be handling. So I brought all of you educators together simply because, number one, I like to trash talk about basketball. And, I'm sorry if I offended anybody, first off, but just want to, I really want to pick your brains. My first question I'm going to start off with George. Why is basketball an important part of education?
Well, so for me personally, this is one of the things that I love actually talking about reffing. For me, when I reffed, you're wrong 100% of the time to 50% of the people, right? That's kind of how it is. And I actually was doing quite high level reffing of basketball, having people scream at me, yell at me, while I was also a principal. And then when I was a principal, I was like, at least I'm not running while I'm being yelled at, right? It was really beneficial. And there's little parts of the culture. And I actually remember this one time, I was doing a college level game, and they do what's called 3-person reffing. So they do 3-person reffing. So a typical high school game is usually 2 people, and it's because there's not many refs. But as you go higher, just because there's more things going on that you're seeing. And I remember there's this one game, and I'm just breaking into college. It's kind of a big deal. Not many people get to that level. And we played 4 quarters because we play FIBA rules here. And I didn't make a call the entire quarter. And I'm somebody's always watching those games and they're evaluating and giving you feedback. And I remember like, I'm gonna get killed at half because like it looks like I'm not in the game. There just was nothing going on where in my zone where I'm calling. And I remember something kind of happened and I called a foul, and it was legitimately like the worst foul call ever. Like it was just such a bad call. And the coach started yelling at me, right? Just started screaming at me. And I said, Coach, wait for a break and play. Like you can yell at me all you want. Just wait for a break, right? So he calls a timeout because he's like, okay, if you want me to ready to break, I'm going to make a break so that I can yell at you. So he calls a timeout. And the other two refs knew I made a bad call, but they never said it. I don't know why they didn't say it, but they just said, don't go over there. Like, do not go over there because you're like, he's going to like rip into you and you're going to deserve it. So I said, no, I'm good. Don't worry about it. So I went over to him and I said, Coach, there's no reason to yell. I don't know what you're upset about because that was a terrible call and I will not do that again. I apologize. And he just like smiled and like what's he gonna say, right? Like what's he gonna say after that? Is like, yeah, it was a terrible call. Yeah, I just told you that. Like I'm the one who just told you it's a terrible call. And I think like there's little things like that I talk about that I think about how that helped me be an administrator, how that helped me become a teacher. And like those little lessons I could tell, like I could share 10 million stories about that. Like when I played, when I coached, when I ref. But I think it was really important for me to say like, hey, how does this actually make me a better teacher? How does learning this and just, kind of saying like, hey, that wasn't, as an administrator, like to be able to say like, hey, that actually wasn't a great decision I made. I'm owning up to that. I'm going to do my best that we don't make that decision again. I learned, and it feels like it was a lot high pressure when you're reffing, right? Because you're like out of breath. Fans are yelling at you. People are yelling at you while you're going. And I'm not a big fan of that. I never yell at refs because it's just because I was one, so I know how it feels. But I think there's so many of those stories, but I think part of it is that we make that connection ourselves through that culture.
Excellent. So, David, you were with one of the greatest educators, maybe of our whole time, especially in the American educational system. What's one thing that stuck out to you from Coach Wooden?
Well, first of all, to piggyback on what George was saying, I think self-reflection, in this process is a key element of any sports and improvement process. But, there's so many lessons that you can take from one context to the other, but it doesn't happen automatically. It has to be intentional, and that's where the guidance comes in. Every great athlete will tell you that they can only get so far without a sounding board and a coach. And so a lot of people think about, when they think about lesson planning, they think about Madeline Hunter, right? The classic 7-step lesson plan. And what they may not realize is that Madeline Hunter would go to UCLA practices and collaborate with Coach Wooden. And from the very beginning of the season, Coach would constantly talk about that it's the little things that make the big things happen. And you may have heard these stories, but they're all true. On the very first day, he would have the players take off their shoes and socks, and he would teach them how to put on their shoes and socks. And you were talking about some of the highest level recruits in the nation as the team got better and started winning championships. But Coach's philosophy was, if you're rolling on a blister, you're not going to be at peak performance. And it's really important to think about every single detail so that eventually you don't have to. And Coach was so fierce on practices that you've probably seen the images of him sitting, cross-legged with the program, in one hand during the games. Unlike the coach that George was describing that we've all been around and the parents who get so adrenalined out during the games, Coach did everything in practice. And he rarely scouted the other team because he figured that if his team was doing those little things to the best of their ability, if you've read his pyramid of success, that's the definition of success, right? The peace of mind that comes from doing the best that you're capable of becoming. And he really believed that. And the results created the buy-in. So unlike today, where you have to have a lot of persuasion and it's all about the individual and trying to deal with the temperaments, one of my favorite stories about Coach is the day that Bill Walton was, classic Bill Walton and doing the Grateful Dead thing in the late 60s and really representing himself the way he felt that it was important. And Coach said, we do have a rule. There's no beards on the team. there's no, nonconformity like the way you're displaying. And Bill Walton said, I don't care. This is me, and you got to deal with it. Coach said, okay, I respect you. I will always respect you, and we're going to miss you.
Yeah.
Hey, that's deep. Aaron, you look at the past, the basketball history, and some of the great things your podcast brings out, some of that good history. Looking back on the history of basketball, how is that important to the educational process?
Well, as a history teacher is where I started out in education, so it's a natural fit for me. Looking back to find gems to pull out for the future, and I think that it's been so much fun this year diving in. I just read John Thompson's autobiography. Jesse Washington's a guy. If you want to talk to him about the autobiography, he is just incredible to talk to as well. But he hits on a lot of the things that everyone else has talked about as well. That great coaches are often great educators. And it used to be a lot of these college coaches came up as educators. John Thompson starts out as a social worker, and in practice every day, he's reading the newspaper to his players and talking to them about current events because he feels like they need to, be aware of these things if they get interviewed. And he's got them in suits and ties, even Allen Iverson, because that's part of his philosophy too. And I just think that, if you, looking back, you can see where things have been and see how we need to change then too. I mean, that gives you, sports is so often the lens to the larger culture. And I think that looking back at where sports has been can often see how we need to start, shifting things as well. John Thompson came up under Red Auerbach, and Red Auerbach was the first to have an all-black starting five, but he told John Thompson, who would have been the sixth man, hey, you're not going to be the sixth man because I'm starting five black guys. And it's just like to hear that now and to let people know, like, this is where we come from. This is why we still have to keep fighting because these battles have been there before. It gives you like the strength to understand that change takes time, but also that the fight needs to be fought.
Excellent. And I'm glad you brought that up. There's one thing I want to get started on before. And if you choose not to comment on this is something that you don't have to comment, but it was slightly controversial starting off on the NCAA tournament. There was a tweet that was sent out by a young lady. Let me just pull up this tweet real quick about the disparities in the women's preparation for the tournament. And her name is Sidonia Price. And y'all let me know if can y'all hear that?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Or are you playing the audio of it?
Yes, can you hear it?
No, I don't hear it.
So she's showing
but I do know what it is.
So do I. Yeah.
I saw the Lunchables that they handed out.
Okay, guys. So the thing about this particular, I don't know if y'all could hear it or see it, but the audio will come through on the podcast. So what do you guys think about that? Today's day and age.
When I see that, and I have a personal connection in the sense that I have a young daughter who's 4.5, who's, already dunking on her, 3-foot hoop outside. And it's like it's a big thing for me as a father. Like she loves basketball because I love basketball. And that's like, that's one of the things that we connect with. I'm really into basketball shoes, so she's really into basketball shoes, right? Like, and we've done some unboxings and things together. And I just think this is like obviously a really important message for what we do in education, not just obviously NCAA basketball, is that really ensuring that every kid has the opportunity to be successful, but then seeing like, hey, this group has more opportunity than this group to elevate and accelerate. And so I think it's really good that there is an awareness to do that. And the other connection that I have to this, I am like a massive Kobe Bryant fan. And probably the hardest thing, like I loved him as a basketball player. I like super loved him as a dad. And, being the father of 2 daughters, the thing that really struck me most was just with his kids, right? Like that was the hardest part about seeing that, like losing a daughter, but then daughters losing a father, and just knowing how much he advocated that, his daughter had the same opportunities as any NBA player, things like that. I think it was, really important. And so I'm glad they brought light to it, because, they deserve that the opportunity to accelerate their craft and how important it is to them too. So I think I'm glad that there's light shed on it.
Yes. Anybody else want to say something before I jump on my
Yeah,
soapbox?
I mean, I think that it's, speak truth to power, right? That wasn't just the food; it was the training facilities, the accommodations. There's no reason. It's such an easy win for the NCAA. Why take the loss? I saw something like Kylie Jenner, to pick on them, started a GoFundMe for her makeup artist, and it's just like, why don't you just, what are you doing? Like, you have this opportunity for just this easy win. Like, they could have been at least equal. It just shows like where the organizers' heads are at, and they need to be called out on it, because it should be equal. That's the point, is providing equal accommodations for them, and they're raising their game, and that's what the NCAA needs to do too.
I think that's closer to the bone, and I really appreciate you saying that, because we have these conversations in our culture, and we've had them for an awfully long time, and they came to a flashpoint in the summer with George Floyd for obvious reasons, and Breonna Taylor. But really, people are being pitted against each other in some really mean-spirited ways, whether it's by race, whether it's by, William, in our last call, we were talking about the history of basketball and the fact that the Irish and the Jews were the first groups to be put in the media as proficient at the game, and they were successful, but also stereotyped by their culture for their proficiency on the court. So the Jews didn't turn the ball over because they were stingy with the ball, or the Irish were sneaky and devious with the behind-the-back passes. And we have a culture in which the wealth is concentrated to such a degree, beyond the Gilded Age, beyond anybody ever imagined. Jeff Bezos beats the sofa cushions, and all those problems are solved. And we're in a situation now where it's easy when there's two cars traveling on the highway and somebody moves over to accommodate an on-ramp and they're crabbing at each other without thinking, hey, wait a second, why do we only have 2 lanes? How come people didn't build for the population we have, or accommodate a longer on-ramp for the more powerful engines of today? This thing was built for 75 years ago, and yet somebody who's 75 years old and looks a certain way is still going to say, oh, it's our problem. And then we've got person against person. So, the institution of the NCAA, I was around for when Ed O'Bannon took them to court, and they don't pay for likenesses. They don't pay, Shabazz Napier, what was it, 2014-15, was talking about couldn't have money for food. And yet, how much was UConn making on the basketball program at that point? So, I'm just going to call it out even more so, because we live in this culture where teachers, every once in a while, I'm enraged when I see one of these public relations campaign from a local car dealership, teacher crying because she's so grateful to have a car to get to work. Never should have happened in the first place. So rather than, all of my students are undocumented or low SES, and most of them are from Mexico and Central America, and they don't have a voice, and they won't use theirs because they're too afraid of the implications. So I think in these moments, it's not just enough to say good on her for speaking truth to power. It's time to double down, and for people who look and sound like us to step up and not just be sort of racism isn't okay the way they said it in the textbook, so maybe think of it differently, but to take it head on and say, nope, not anymore.
I'm going to say nope, not anymore. The NCAA at times like this exposes itself of something that it has always done. So I'm going to move to a lighter subject because I like to talk trash. And I'm going to tell you right now that I'm going to apologize that my Houston Cougars are going to win it all. So anybody want to shoot out their pick? Who you got winning it all?
I've had the Zags all season.
Zags?
Zags.
So you're like a real underdog, dangerous, risky kind of thing.
Well, it hurts me, though, because I'm an IU fan and IU graduate. And if they win it all, that means they take down our 76 undefeated season. So I don't say it with no trepidation. I'd like to see them lose. I'm glad that Purdue lost in the first game, but I just think they're going to win it. I've had fun watching them at least all year. They're a fun team to watch.
The most foul-mouthed recording I've ever heard in my life was at Coach Wooden's house. Somebody had sent him a cassette tape. This was on cassette. And I talk about feeling mortified. Coach didn't swear. I swear a lot. And he, like, you know, if you slipped once, it was like you'd be so small you could leave the room without opening the door. And I sat and listened to this entire tape of Bobby Knight in a closed practice, sitting next to John Wooden. I've never been so red-faced in my entire life.
Oh, yeah.
I've got a funny Coach Knight story. So the teacher that he has left us now and is working full-time for 19.9, it was in his prep period, and we're prep and PLC are blocked together. So we're sitting there in his PLC, and he gets a phone call from, it comes up Lubbock, Texas, and he's like, this is Coach Knight. Do you mind if I step out for a minute and take this? Because we're in the middle of PLC. Okay. And so he steps out, puts it on speakerphone so I could hear. And Coach Knight actually invites him to fly down to Lubbock because they're making a shirt and he wants to meet him. And he's like, you want me to come down there? And he's like, okay. And then how am I going to know how to get to your house? Well, I'll pick you up at the airport. And he's like, you're going to pick me up at the airport. And sure enough, that's how it ended up going down. He flies down to Lubbock.
That's the best
Coach
story
Knight
I've
picks him
ever
up.
heard to get out of the PLC meeting.
It was awesome. Unbelievable. Yeah, it was great.
George, who you got winning in the tournament?
You know, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't really watch that much anymore, and I'm looking. I know, like, first of all, none of you watch Canadian college basketball. I want to give you that. I just want to let you know that too, right? Like Gonzaga, actually, I don't know, and Aaron, you might be able to tell me this. They usually actually have like several Canadian players. I don't know if they do this year, but like Kelly Olynyk, I actually reffed him, and I reffed him once when he was in high school. Got 3 fouls in the first half, and I remember I think it was his dad came and started like yelling at me. He's like, "Do you know who my son is going to go to the NBA?" I'm like, "He should stay out of foul trouble then." Like, you want let's keep him in the game. So like I remember like he was a very good player, but I've watched a little bit. It threw me off that it didn't start on Thursday. I don't know why. I don't know if did that not throw everyone off? Like it was just
it threw me off totally.
Yeah. So but I would be okay with Gonzaga win, but I'm Sister Jean all the way. I'm like,
yeah. Hey, that team is nice. I was like, what?
Yeah,
number 25. I like that guy.
Yeah, it's just like an interesting story with them. I have always been for the underdog, right? Like I'm always I've the only team that I've ever really been into, because I don't have like, hey, I'm like a Duke fan or UNC. The only team I've ever been really into is the Fab Five. Like the Fab Five, that was like, all right. That was when I played basketball, like in high school. We wore the black socks, long shorts. It was like a big deal. But other than that, I'm like rooting for good games, and and then whoever's the underdog, that's who I'm cheering for.
Well, you can pick up Michigan because Juwan Howard is coaching them. So there you go.
That was like just to see him. I think it was last night. Him talking. It was just so cool to like remember how much I was into that game, and he's got like the gray hair now. Yeah. I'm like I got a little gray in my beard, so it's just weird to see that kind of that circle, right? It is really neat. So yeah, like I'm always gonna cheer a little bit for Michigan because I was like obsessed with the Fab Five. Like that was just such a great story.
Makes me want to call an extra timeout just thinking about it.
That's a low blow. That's still a low blow. That's a low blow.
Chris Weber was about to check into the chat too.
David, that is not nice.
You said he's about nice. Talking about trash the whole time.
That's right. Yeah. He's
you're right. So, which group surprised you the most? Like, which team like just messed up your tournament? You messed up your bracket the most.
got to be Oral Roberts, all right? 15 seed going to the Sweet 16. Just brutalized my bracket. I'm a Big Ten fan, so I'm, of course, 9 teams in. Oh, this is our year. We haven't won a championship since 2000. Everybody's just getting smoked right and left, and Oral Roberts taking them out right away. Just like, well, I guess that's it for my bracket.
Yeah, my little brother works at the University of Illinois, and he swore up and down that Illinois was gonna, do something. And me, like a dummy, made my bracket with Illinois going further than what they did. So, thank you, all you Illinois fans fighting Illini. Excuse me. But yeah, guys, I noticed that none of you jumped on my University of Houston bandwagon. Nobody likes Baylor.
Hey, I love the University of Houston. We used to have Kelvin Sampson as our coach, so we gifted him to you. He got booted from IU for text. He was text messaging. Talk about NCAA. He was over the text message limit and violated an NCAA rule. Got fired from IU, and then the next year, the NCAA got rid of that rule. So that's how it goes. And we haven't had a coach stick around since then. So.
Is the Houston Couros the same? Like, is it Phi Slamma Jamma?
Yeah,
that's that same group. Yeah.
So, like, they never won, right? They never won the championship, which is amazing because they're probably like the most hype. Well, actually, it would be between them and the Fab Five, right? Like, probably the most hyped team that never actually won.
Yeah, but they were like that before the Fab Five. Aaron, you can correct me on this one, but is there a greater college basketball team that never won a championship other than the Phi Slamma Jamma or the Fab Five?
I think those would be my tops. Yeah.
Well, we know there's a couple teams that of UCLA that didn't make it to the championship. So
when was that? I was too busy counting banners. We're just happy to be back. Since Ben Howland took it to the Final Four a couple years in a row, it's been a big dry spell, and it's I'd say Westwood is probably the hardest place to coach. With that kind of a legacy and those kinds of expectations. A few years ago, Pauley Pavilion got this redo, and the place is, I don't know if any of you have seen pictures, it is gorgeous. It is a beautiful place. It's not like huge like some of the new arenas that make you wonder if this is an NBA sub-franchise with a school attached to it. But it's just a special place to play. But I cannot imagine the pressure of coming in, and I don't care what coaches say about, this is a new day, that was years ago. No, it's still alive. You look up in the rafters, and it's intense. So, now that we've got, speaking of IU, now that we've gotten over the Steve era, I think, I don't know. It was a good idea in theory, but I'm happy that Mick Cronin is doing well. Like me, he's a divorced dad with a daughter, and I identify with the way that he let his daughter pick the house that he was going to live in, and he seems to be about all the right things with his players. They're responding. We had a big injury coming down the home stretch, lost the last 4 games of the regular season, and I did not think that when you invited me to this, I was already getting it from you about the Bruins. I figured they would have been long gone by now. So I'm just happy that we're still there.
I know, and I get those emails. I'm like, dang, man, they didn't lose yet.
Well, I was just, I was in shock. I just wanted to know, hey, did you see the game? Did you see that score? Enjoy it.
Hey, I don't know you well enough to send you the middle finger emoji, but
you can imagine it.
Yeah. All right, so let's take it to another level, and I'm gonna let you guys go. Who do you have in the NBA? Who is your team, and who do you think is gonna win it this year?
We just need 2 healthier legs. I'm born and bred Lakers fan.
Okay.
That's a tall order right now, especially when you got an Achilles problem and a high ankle sprain. Those are not easy injuries. LeBron will be back. I would be worried about AD. He's been fragile anyways. But I think the Brooklyn Nets. I mean, I hate to say it because I think people they're easy to be the villains this year. But if Durant, speaking of a healthy leg, can come back, and they might be in the finals anyways because Kyrie and Harden have it cooking. And you can hate Harden or not, but he's an unbelievable basketball player. So I got them winning it all this year.
So you sound like a logical guy, and I love that about you. We've been old friends for 20 minutes. but for me, I don't I'm like George. I haven't had a remote control in my hand for a whole game in I don't know, 10 years. So I just go with my guts. Like the Bruins, on paper, Alabama's playing really well. They're long, they're tall, they're doing great from three. I hate the whole state and the history of Alabama, so I don't care. And when it comes to Brooklyn, that's New Jersey. Whatever.
Yeah. Hey, they got those New Jersey, those like colored New Jersey uniforms that look awesome. They brought those back, and they got nets on there. Yeah, that's right. They can't fit the whole thing on there. Yeah.
I would have to go with. It's going to be. I'm a lifelong Lakers fan. It's going to probably be Brooklyn and LA in the finals, which is a little, to be honest with you, like even as a Lakers fan, it's kind of like that's one thing I'm not really a giant fan of the NBA is like you get out of a pretty good guess who's going to make it to the finals. The one thing, and it's we're kind of watching this right now. I don't know if this even happened today. Like I've been a Lakers fan forever, but the Raptors are starting to go over top. And the thing, and I'm sure you all appreciate this. Basketball was like, I was made fun of as a kid all of the time because I played basketball. Like basketball is not the sport in Canada, right? And you're like, basketball, there's no contact. And it's like, have you ever played? Like, you don't understand, but they just, it's not as rough as hockey, obviously. But actually, when the Raptors won here, it was such a big deal for Canadian basketball, right? Because it actually, like all of a sudden, a lot of families said, why are we spending thousands of dollars on equipment when we could just get our kids shoes? And they're excited about this. Like, I don't know if you ever saw the Vince Carter effect. Like Vince Carter winning that dunk contest basically made a whole crop of NBA players out of Canada. Like, it's really amazing to see that. And in 20 years, I'm telling you, like, Canada's going to beat the U.S. in Olympic basketball just because of the Raptors winning. It's a huge deal here. And I was actually, I don't know if you even know this. I was actually, if you see the Kawhi shot, I'm sure you all saw it, the 4-bound shot. Yeah. So if you look at the beginning of that clip, and it's like this is now like a Canadian sports moment. It's going to go in history where someone's going to say, "Where were you when Kawhi hit that shot?" Like it's going to be like one of those legendary moments in Canadian. And what I could say is, so play the beginning of that tape. In the corner, there's a guy in a blue jacket standing up. That was me. I was there. So like I was actually at that game. I was traveling to a speaking event and I had a layover in Toronto, just happened to be there. And I got a single ticket on the first row behind the floor. And that was the craziest game. It was a close game the entire time, but just seeing like how Canada just kind of transformed and became so obsessed with basketball was just, for someone who has loved basketball as a kid forever, and just to see the whole country embrace it, because like we don't even got the Grizzlies anymore. It's just the Raptors, right? So there's this little bone of contention still that the Grizzlies, and I love them, but that they picked big country Bryant Reeves over Steve Nash. There's a little hurt there still, because that pick like was basically the beginning of the downfall of the Grizzlies, right?
Well, with the way the Raptors are playing, you'll get another chance at the draft this year. You should watch the tournament for draft picks, because that's where they're headed right now.
And I'm actually good with that. I'm actually good with that in the sense that when Kawhi left here, if you would have said to me, because there was like two people that could have left that year, it was either Kawhi Leonard or Masai Ujiri, the GM. I'm like, you can let Kawhi go. Do not let Masai Ujiri go. I think he is the smartest brain in basketball right now. He's the talent he gets out of like just so many of the like Van Vliet, never like highest points per game or highest points in a game ever for an undrafted player. He is such a good basketball player. And Masai Ujiri, like he actually, I don't know when Toronto got in the playoffs the first time under Masai. And they were playing the Brooklyn Nets, and he's the GM, and he went out to like, they actually have a little place in front of the arena that Toronto plays at, and they call it Jurassic Park, which is amazing. And it's just like full of fans outside the game. And he like said, F Brooklyn. Like he said this out loud as a GM, and he got fined like $100,000 or something. And just like everybody loved him because he was just like so present, and just like he was with the team. And there was like story, like they have a road trip, they go to Detroit, and it's like a 5-hour drive. He actually goes with the fans on the bus. Like Masai Ujiri is Like,
He's legit.
he is the guy. I love that. Yeah.
So you were talking about international recruiting and the fact that, parents were realizing that with so little equipment, you could do so much. And there's a wonderful book called Big Game, Small World, and it's about the international influence of basketball. And I'm willing to put a couple of dollars down on this. I'm pretty sure I've got the longest road trip to play a game. So I met a student who walked into my class from Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia, and spent about 18 months. He actually forged his parents' name on the exchange student paperwork and called them from the airport to say he was on the way to California, and wound up in an urban, crazy environment, gets through school, and then invites me home for dinner. So I wound up in Western China, Tibet, and Mongolia with this kid and his family for a month. And I get through a 30-hour train ride from Beijing through the Gobi. They pick the train up off the tracks in the middle of the night because it's a different gauge tracks. People are carrying like watermelons around on their head because there's nowhere to get produce for 1,000 miles. After that, we pull into Ulaanbaatar. We get there. I see Zolzaya and his family, and he's like, "Come on, let's go." And I said, Go where, man? I just got here. And he's like, "You brought sneakers though, right?" I said, "Yeah." He's like, "Let's go." So I was like, "Okay, all right." So he brings me to this cinder block building. Now, all the buildings in Ulaanbaatar are just brute, usually Soviet made, and I have no idea what we're walking up to. He goes up, bam, 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 bam. There's a big, massive metal door, and there's a slot like at a speakeasy. The slot opens, bop, 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 in Mongolia. Bop, 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 bop. Okay, slot closes, door opens, and then you walk in, and you're like in like Flint movie. All of a sudden, there's like basketball everywhere. And you've never seen more horrible conditions to play I mean, like the floor, like if you think like the dead spot in the Boston Garden was something, like you're dribbling and all of a sudden the ball just goes and there's nothing. Or you're dribbling and the ball goes that way. So there's PVC pipe where the rim should have been. The whole thing is hilarious. And like the first play, I'm trying to show up for my student. So the first play, a guy goes up, I swat the ball out of bounds. I'm vaguely like proud of myself and I look around. And suddenly, like, people aren't having as good a time. That's not the game I'm here for. And so then I realized that everybody's just in total joy. Like, his dad throws up a wild air ball, and they're all laughing. I've never had a better time on a basketball court. We were there for about 3 hours. And I swear to God, the next day, the only part of me that was sore was my abs and my face from laughing and smiling so much.
Awesome.
So you're spot on with the international stuff. And, I think about, William, you asked, like, how's our year going? Well, it's crazy. It's bananas. But if it wasn't this, then I wouldn't have met William, and I wouldn't have met the two of you. And so for that, I'm grateful. And, William, thanks for inviting me today.
Hey, no problem at all. I want to thank all of you. I want to thank all of you for coming on the show. Where can our guests find you at, George, on social media?
You can find me at Couros on Instagram, Twitter. Google me. You'll find me all over the place. So, yeah, I'll be honest with you. You reached out to me like, can you do a podcast? And I'm like, and you're like, on basketball? I'm like, yep.
I know how to get you now.
I think a lot of times, I appreciate this conversation because, like, I love talking education and stuff like that. But I love this time just to talk. I was actually, to be honest with you, I was late because I was doing a podcast with somebody. And we got like talking basketball shoes. And I don't know and she's like, both of us found out we have a fetish and like we're having issues. So she's from North Carolina and I just picked up these shoes.
Very nice. All right.
So we were like, I'm like, I gotta go. Like, I can't. And she's like, yeah. So it was awesome, right? Just to see even like the culture of, basketball shoes and things like that is really kind of neat to see that. So yeah, I was pumped just to talk this stuff because I don't get the opportunity as much as I'd like.
Hey man, well I tell you what, maybe we can come back and do this again around the NBA Finals time and just talk some more trash. That would be good. Aaron, where can our guests find you at?
Yeah, I'm at Principal Meyer _Meyer on Twitter. The podcast is the 19.9 podcast. And George, if you're into it, we just talked to Nick DePaula, who writes about shoes for ESPN, and then Ian Stonebrook, who writes for Nice Kicks and a bunch of other places. So they're going to be coming up on one of the podcasts coming up. So my side hobby, just having fun with shoes and basketball.
Like, am I invited on? Is that what you're saying?
But
I want to be on. Like,
yes, I will invite you. You're coming next time because I want to do.
I want to be with those guys though. I want to see some wins, right?
Definitely.
I'm trying to like get hooked up with some shoes here. They probably get everything ahead of time.
They do. Yeah. I'll get you on the next one.
I love
George,
it.
I gotta ask the question. Does anybody ever invite you on a podcast and welcome you on and say, hey, I love all your philanthropic work in Eastern Europe and stuff, but what?
I must have missed that part.
I was thinking it was George Soros humor, but anyway.
Well, actually, what's funny, now I get it. So I actually,
David's killing it with the trash talk.
I'm not even kidding. So I have like a Twitter, like I'm very active on Twitter, and I have like a column in TweetDeck, and it's just looks up George Couros. If someone says my full name, like I'm aware of it, and someone's like, yeah, I'm in that George Couros guy. And I'm like, who is this person? So then I looked, I'm like, oh, they're talking George Soros. They like legitimately thought because it's like 3 letters off, right? Like it's they were like swearing about me, but they just thought I was I was the George Couros guy.
For Twitter, three letters off is 0 letters off.
Yeah. So I was like, who? Why is this person mad at me? I haven't done anything. It was they're going off on Twitter about it.
For sure. David, where can our guests find you at?
DavidPreston.net is my website, and on Twitter, I'm at Preston Learning, and I don't have nearly George's awareness of anything on Twitter. I go on there out of a guilty sense of I probably ought to.
Well, I'll tell you what, guys. If it's okay, I would like to give a standing invitation for around May or early June. We can talk some trash about some NBA players in the NBA season, if that's okay with you guys.
That'd be great.
Let's make it happen. Nets Lakers finals, hopefully.
Raptors turning around. It's coming
Raptors
up.
turning around. Yeah.
Kawhi's coming back.
Big trade coming.
Yeah, big trade coming, and yeah, okay, yeah, guys, y'all tripping. All right, hey, thank you guys for coming on the show, and you guys have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, fellas, appreciate you, man. Thank you for coming through, and I'll publish the episode. I think I have Aaron. I need a picture from you.
Okay, I'll send
you sent it. You sent it, didn't you?
Nah, I didn't send it. I just saw that today. I was trying to figure out the link, and I was like, I need to send a picture too.
Okay, yeah, no problem. No problem. I'll get a picture from you, sir. And hey, man, I love your podcast.
Hey, shoot me your address and what size you need.
I don't think my size, man. I'm big.
We got double X. We got double XL. You don't think double XL in those Cougar stores?
I'm a triple, sir. I'm triple.
Right. Well, yeah, you let me know. Get some get a pair for your kids.
Oh yeah, that's right. My son, he'd love them to death. Yes, yes.
Shoot me a size and an address. I'll send them your way.
Hey, brother, I sure appreciate you, man. Thank you.